Or not, here I am. My name is Frances Anderton, and I'm talking to you from my bed in Los Angeles, California, where I live and work. And in fact, I cover design and architecture for a radio station here in LA called KCRW. I hope you're all doing well out there in this very strange time that we're all in. I'm very honoured to be part of the Architecture Foundation's Bedtime Stories. Thank you so much to Alicia Pivaro, my great friend, for inviting me and having this idea, and to Rosie, who's helped me connect with you all. Thank you, Rosie. Okay, I hope you're sitting comfortably. I'm up against some pillows, and behind me is a rug on the wall that was actually a design by the great jazz trumpeter Miles Davis, just in case you're interested. Anyway, in view of what's going on right now, we who are doing the reading were asked by Alicia and her team to choose readings, either non-fiction or fiction, that, in Alicia's words, quote, have an ambition to help us reset, reimagine and rebuild a different future. So I decided to go back to the future, as in the mid-1970s, and I chose a novel called Ecotopia. It was written by a San Francisco writer and editor named Ernest Callenbach. It's a fairly long novel, so I can't read the whole thing. So I'm going to kick off with a summary from Craig Hodgetts. He's a wonderful architect here in LA, and he actually, back when the book was published, or near to that time, designed sets for a possible movie of the book that didn't wind up being made. And then during the last presidential race, 2016, he wrote an essay called Time to Reboot Ecotopia. This is what he said. This will help you understand Ecotopia as we go into my portions. So this is Craig. Prompted no doubt by the events of the 60s and 70s, Vietnam, Watergate, the oil crisis, prohibitions on abortion and marijuana, and extreme misgivings about the social and political trajectory of the country he loved, Ernest Callenbach posited a better world. He called it Ecotopia. That's an amalgam of ecology, obviously, and utopia. It would be, he mused, a nation-state carved out of the body of the USA, one no longer subject to the whims and wiles of a corrupt and loveless federal government. A state able to stand on its own principles of sustainability, progressive social policies and gender equality. It would be a state where solar power, electric vehicles and vegan vendors roam streets alive with communitarian values, craft fairs and gentle entrepreneurs, all under the benign leadership of an elected council of women. Oops, I'm just changing pages here. Okay, on he goes. The book became a cult sensation, tapping into the idealism and, yes, naivety of the Beats, the hippies, the airy-fairy artists and long-haired professors who were Callenbach's cultural models. It was 1975, well into the reign of the hate, as in Haight-Ashbury. But it was more than that. Callenbach's thesis was that the citizens of the state of California had had enough, that they had no choice but to secede from the United States to protect their culture from an assault from the right and establish a government built on what he saw as an important and necessary fact, that the globe we live on needed an example of how to get things right. So his nation state, his overture to peace and prosperity was simple: fire the referee and reset the goalposts. Okay, that was Craig Hodgetts summarising Ecotopia. Well, here we are in this global event that we're all experiencing, the coronavirus pandemic, and this has some calling for a reset. I'm going to quickly bring in another writer actually at this point. It's the writer Arundhati Roy. She wrote about our present moment. The virus has struck hardest thus far in the richest, most powerful nations of the world, bringing the engine of capitalism to a juddering halt. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our databanks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. That was Arundhati Roy speaking currently. Okay, back to Ecotopia, 1975, because Ernest Callenbach was imagining a place that left behind prejudice, hatred, avarice, dead ideas, dead rivers and smoky skies. He was imagining a stable state economy and a society without cars. So I'm just going to read a few portions from the book. If you've got to jump off now, I highly recommend you read it. You can download it as a PDF. I think that's part of the Callenbach philosophy, that this book would be available to whoever wanted to read it. But anyway, I'm just going to read you a few portions. They're the more architectural leaning portions, or design, technology, architecture. And basically the conceit of the book is that a journalist named William Weston has been sent by the newspaper, the Times Post, to go and report on Ecotopia 20 years after it seceded from the rest of the United States. The book is a combination of the articles that he writes for the newspaper as well as his own diary entries. I'm just going to read from some of the articles that he wrote for the newspaper, and as I say, they're just portions. But we'll start with his arrival at Ecotopia. Remember, this is the west of America, which has seceded from the rest of the country, which is still a bit of a fantasy, by the way, among some people here. Here we go. William Weston on his journey to Ecotopia. On board TWA Flight 38, New York to Reno, May 3rd. As I begin this assignment, my jet heads west to Reno, last American city before the forbidding Sierra Nevada mountains that guard the closed borders of Ecotopia. The passage of time has softened the shock of Ecotopia's separation from the United States, and Ecotopia's example, as is now clear, was not as novel as it seemed at the time. Biafra had attempted secession from Nigeria but failed. Bangladesh had successfully broken free of Pakistan. Belgium had in effect dissolved into 3 countries. Even the Soviet Union has had its separatist minority disturbances. Ecotopia's secession was partly modelled on that of Quebec from Canada. Such devolution has become a worldwide tendency. He obviously didn't anticipate Brexit, but I guess one could say he was rather prescient. The sole important counter-development we can point to is the union of the Scandinavian countries, which perhaps only proves the rule, since the Scandinavians were virtually one people culturally in any event. Nevertheless, many Americans still remember the terrible shortages of fruit, lettuce, wine, cotton, paper, lumber and other Western products which followed the breakaway of what had been Washington, Oregon and Northern California. These problems exacerbated the general US economic depression of the period, speeded up our chronic inflation and caused widespread dissatisfaction with government policies. Moreover, Ecotopia still poses a nagging challenge to the underlying national philosophy of America, ever-continuing progress, the fruits of industrialization for all, a rising gross national product. During the last 2 decades, we as a people have mostly tried to ignore what has been happening to Ecotopia, in the hope it will prove to be mere foolishness and go away. It is clear by now, however, that Ecotopia is not going to collapse as many American analysts at first predicted. The time has come when we must get a clearer understanding of Ecotopia. If its social experimentation turns out to be absurd and irresponsible, it will then no longer tempt impressionable young Americans. If its strange customs indeed prove as barbaric as rumours suggest, Ecotopia will have to pay the cost in outraged world opinion. If ecotopian claims are false, American policymakers can profit from knowledge of that fact. For instance, we need to assess the allegation that Ecotopia has no more deaths from air and chemical pollution. My assignment during the next 6 weeks, therefore, is to explore ecotopian life from top to bottom, search out the realities behind the rumours and describe in concrete detail how ecotopian society actually operates. Okay, that's the start. Now he's crossing the ecotopian border. On board the Sierra Express, Tahoe, San Francisco, May 4th. I have now entered Ecotopia, the first known American to visit the new country since its independence 19 years ago. My jet landed at Reno. Though it is not widely known, the Ecotopian government prohibits even international flights from crossing its territory on grounds of air and noise pollution. Flights between San Francisco and Asia or over the pole to Europe must not only use a remote airport 40 miles outside the city, but they are forced to follow over water routes. Thus, to reach San Francisco, I was compelled to deplane at Reno and take an expensive taxi ride to the train station, the northern end of Lake Tahoe. From there is a fast and frequent service. When my taxi pulled up, there was nobody around. The driver had to get out, go over to a small stone guardhouse and get the Ecotopian military to interrupt their card game. But they knew of my coming. They checked my papers with an air of informed authority, and they passed the taxi through the gate only after making a point of the fact that it had required a special dispensation to allow an internal combustion engine to pass their sacred portals. They checked my luggage with some curiosity, paying attention to my sleeping pills. But I was allowed to keep everything except my trusty .45 and holster. This might be standard garb in New York, I was told, but no concealable weapons are permitted in Ecotopia. Perhaps noticing my slightly uneasy reaction, one of the guards remarked that Ecotopian streets are quite safe by day or night. One of them even handed me a small booklet, Ecotopia Explains. "It might make things easier to get used to," said the guard, in a soft, almost insinuatingly friendly tone that I now began to recognise as a national trait. "Relax, it's a free country." "My friend," I countered, "I've been in a hell of a lot stranger places than this country, and I'll relax when I feel like it. If you're finished with my papers, I'll be on my way." "Weston," said the guard, looking me in the eye, "you're a writer. We count on you to use those words carefully while you're here. If you come back this way, maybe you'll be able to use the word friend in good faith. We'd like that." He then smiled warmly and put out his hand. Rather to my surprise, I took it and found a smile on my own face as well. We drove on to the Tahoe station of the Ecotopian train system. It turned out to be rather a rustic affair. That was the chalet, the station. But then I went down to my train, and it looked more like a wingless airplane than a train. At first I'd thought I'd gotten into an unfinished car. There were no seats. The floor was covered with thick spongy carpet and divided into compartments by knee-high partitions. A few passengers were sprawled on large bag-like leather cushions that lay scattered about. One elderly man had taken a blanket from a pile at one end of the car and laid down for a nap. I sat down on one of the huge pillows, realising that it would be a great view. My companions lit up some cigarettes, which I recognised as marijuana from the odour, and began to pass them around. As my first gesture of international goodwill, I took a few puffs myself, and soon we were all sociably chatting away. Their sentimentality about nature has even led the Ecotopians to bring greenery into their trains, which are full of hanging ferns and small plants I could not identify. My companions, however, reeled off their botanical names with assurance. At the end of the car stood containers rather like trash bins, each with a large letter, M, G and P. These, I was told, were recycle bins. By the time you notice you are underway in an Ecotopian train, you feel virtually no movement at all. Since it operates by magnetic suspension and propulsion, there is no rumble of wheels or whine or vibration. People talk, there's the clink of glasses and teacups, passengers wave to friends. And an hour and a quarter after we left Tahoe, the train plunged into a tube near the bay shore and emerged a few minutes later in San Francisco's main station. Okay, so we've arrived in San Francisco, and off he goes now to check out San Francisco. If you're familiar with San Francisco, you'll probably know Market Street. He describes it as once a mighty boulevard striking down the city to the waterfront. It had now become a mall planted with thousands of trees, and the street itself, now featuring electric taxis, minibuses, delivery carts, had shrunk to a two-lane affair. The remaining space is occupied by bicycle lanes, fountains, sculptures, kiosks, and what he called absurd little gardens, surrounded by benches. Scattered here and there are pavilions, and they turn out to be stops on the minibus system, and people wait there out of the rain. The buses, he describes them as comical, battery-driven contraptions, driverless and steered and stopped by an electronic gadget that follows wires buried on the streets. These buses charge no fare. When I asked a fellow passenger about this, he said they're paid for in the same way as streets, out of general tax funds. And like many ecotopians, he tends to babble and spell out the entire economic rationale for the minibus system, almost as if he were trying to sell it to me. I thanked him, and after a few blocks I jumped off. Ecotopians, and I'm telling you, this book was very prescient. Ecotopians setting out to go more than a block or two usually pick up one of the sturdy white-painted bicycles that lie about the streets by the hundreds and are available free to all. I'm just going to cough. When I remarked to a friendly pedestrian that this system must be a joy to thieves and vandals, he denied it heatedly. He then put a case, which may not be totally far-fetched, that it is cheaper to lose a few bicycles than provide more taxis and minibuses. I'm just going to take a little swig of tea, okay? One sec. Okay, so we're still in San Francisco, downtown San Francisco. And what is the most astonishing fact that I have yet encountered in Ecotopia is the great downtown skyscrapers. Once the headquarters of far-flung corporations, they have been turned into apartments. The story I heard repeatedly on the streets today is that the former outlying residential areas have largely been abandoned. Thousands of cheaply built houses in newer districts, scornfully labelled ticky-tacky boxes, as suburban development in California used to be called, these ticky-tacky boxes have been sacked of their wiring, glass and hardware and bulldozed away. Finally, however, I navigated my way back to the station, retrieved my suitcase and located a nearby hotel recommended as suitable for an American, but likely to give some taste of how ecotopians live. Like everything in Ecotopia, my room is full of contradictions. It's comfortable, if a little old-fashioned by our standards. The bed is atrocious. Oh, there's someone, I'm just reading a comment. This makes me think of Cuba. I wonder if the revolution there is an influence. Yeah, maybe. Maybe, if Callenbach was still alive, we could ask him. The bed is atrocious, although I think you'll find there's more technology. I'm just getting to a technological part. The bed is atrocious. It lacks springs, being just foam rubber overboard, yet it is covered with a luxurious down comforter. There's a large work table equipped with a hot plate and teapot. Its surface is plain, unvarnished wood with many mysterious stains, but on it stands a small, sleek picture phone. Despite their aversion to many modern devices, the Ecotopians have some that are even better than ours. Their picture phones, for example, are far easier to use than ours and have much better picture quality. Okay, I'm turning over the page here. Let's see, here we go. Hang on a sec. Okay, so I use the picture phone to confirm advance arrangements for a visit tomorrow with the Minister of Food, with whom I shall begin to investigate the ecotopian claims of stable state ecological systems, about which so much controversy has raged. Okay, I'm just taking another swig of tea, and I have now lost count of the time. Can someone who's writing messages just tell me what the time is? That would be great. Okay, or else I'll call my daughter. Summer, can you tell me what the time is? Okay, we've got about 5 more minutes. Food, sewage and stable states. San Francisco. Thank you, Dogny Darko. Food, sewage and stable states. San Francisco, May 6th. I arrived at the Ministry of Food for my interview with the minister. I was unhappy to find that she, note the she because this place is largely run by women, she was too busy to see me. I was introduced instead to an assistant minister, a man in his early 30s who received me in a work overalls outfit. His office was surprisingly unimpressive for a person of importance. No desk, no conference table, no soft chairs. Against another wall was a kind of laboratory setup with testing equipment of various kinds. The assistant minister, like many ecotopians, is unnervingly relaxed, with a deep, slow voice. He sprawled on woven cushions in a sunny corner of the floor under a skylight with some kind of ivy hanging by it. And his lab assistant produced hot water for tea on a Bunsen burner. I squatted awkwardly and began by asking my carefully prepared questions about ecotopian agricultural output. These were ignored. Instead, the assistant minister insisted on giving me a little background. He began to discuss not agriculture at all, but sewage. The first major project of his ministry after independence, he said, had been to put the country's food cycle on a stable state basis. All food wastes, sewage and garbage were to be turned into So I'm actually going to jump towards the end where they talk about how Ecotopia actually came into being, because the point is, let's see. So I'm jumping a bit here, and I'm going to go to Ecotopian television and its wares, and then the economy, and then we'll wrap. But as I say, you can download Ecotopia by PDF, and it's a really interesting read. So we're back to William Weston doing his reports. Ecotopians claim to have sifted through modern technology and rejected huge tracts of it because of its ecological harmfulness. However, despite this general technological austerity, they employ video devices even more extensively than we do. Feeling that they should transport their bodies only when it's a pleasure, they seldom travel on business, in quotes, in our manner. Instead, they tend to transact business by using their picture phones, obviously very resonant with this moment right now in all our Zoom conferences. These employ the same cables that provide television connections. The whole country, except for a few isolated rural spots, is... Why don't you carry on reading? Oh, Florian Beigel, I don't think I can. I think we cut off at 9:30, 1:30 LA time. But thank you. These employ the same cables that... Oh, I just said that. The entire country is wired with cable. There is no ordinary broadcasting. Video sets are everywhere. But strangely enough, I have seldom seen people sitting before them, blotted out in the American manner. Whether this is because of some mysterious national traits or because of the programming being markedly different, or both, I cannot yet tell. But ecotopians seem to use TV rather than letting it use them. Some channels are apparently literal parts of the government, something like a council chamber with a PA system. People watch these when the doings of local governments or the national legislature are being transmitted, which is exactly what's happening in LA now. Viewers not only watch, they expect to participate. They phone in with questions and comments, sometimes for the officials present, sometimes for the TV staffs. Thus, TV doesn't only provide news, much of the time it is the news. There's a whole spiel now about TV and advertising and how that's shaped ecotopians' attitudes towards material goods. And he says, of course, many consumer items are considered ecologically offensive and simply not available. So nobody has them. That is, they don't have electric can openers, hair curlers, frying pans, and carving knives. To curb industrial proliferation, the variety of which is so delightful in our American department stores is much restricted here. Many basic necessities are utterly standardized. Bath towels, for instance, can be bought in only one color, white, so people have to dye their own in attractive patterns, using gentle natural hues from plants and mineral sources, I'm told. Okay, hello Ed Jack, hello. So I'm going to wrap now. The Ecotopian Economy, Fruit of Crisis. San Francisco, May 12th. It is widely believed among Americans that the Ecotopians have become a shiftless and lazy people. This was the natural conclusion drawn after independence when the Ecotopians adopted a 20-hour work week. Yet no one in America, I think, has fully grasped the immense break this represented with our way of life. And even now it is astonishing that the Ecotopian legislature, in the first flush of power, was able to carry through such a revolutionary measure. What was at stake, informed Ecotopians insist, was nothing less than the revision of the Protestant work ethic upon which America had been built. The consequences were plainly severe. In economic terms, Ecotopia was forced to isolate its economy from the competition of harder working peoples. There was a drop in gross national product by more than a third, but the profoundest implications of the decreased work week were philosophical and ecological. Mankind, the Ecotopians assumed, was not meant for production as the 19th and early 20th centuries had believed. Instead, humans were meant to take their modest place in a seamless, stable state web of living organisms, disturbing that web as little as possible. This would mean sacrifice of present consumption, but it would ensure future survival, which became an almost religious objective, perhaps akin to earlier doctrines of salvation. People were to be happy not to the extent they dominated their fellow creatures on earth, but to the extent they lived in balance with them. And that's as much as I have time to read today. Hello, Alejandro Catalan. I'm so glad you're loving this. I highly recommend that you download it. It's a really, really fascinating book, and it's really amazing how prescient it is and how much it seems to be resonating with our own, like literally our present moment this past few weeks, as well as some of the changes that were starting to happen in our lives as well, to varying degrees depending on where we live. So thank you so much to the Architecture Foundation for inviting me to participate in these bedtime stories. If it is your bedtime, I hope you sleep very well. Oh, repeat the name of the book and the author, please. What book? Sorry, I've just joined. The book is Ecotopia. It is by Ernest Callenbach. I've actually given you the short version of the name. Hang on a sec. Let me go back. I've now lost my first bit of paper. My first bit, it's Ecotopia, and it has a subtitle. Oh, it's by Ernest Callenbach, Callenbach. It was written in 1975 in San Francisco, and you can find it online. I'm just looking for the long title. It's something about the journalist William Weston. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got it written down somewhere. But you'll find it easily, Ecotopia. And then Craig Hodgetts, who is based in LA, who you should know about as well, he wrote an essay that is in a book of essays of his called Time to Reboot Ecotopia. So anyway, most definitely, I really want to find the full name of the book. Anyway, it's really lovely to talk to you all online. I'm really honoured that you listened, and recommend that you listen to the next bedtime stories because Alicia and the team at the Architecture Foundation have lined up some really great readers. Thank you so much. Good night. Good night.